So welcome to the fourth chat with the Chief Executive, and today I would like to welcome Craig Byrne of Scottish Cycling. And Craig, we know that from speaking with other sports that lockdown has presented many difficulties. There have been few positives, but that's not exactly the same story in cycling. Tell us about your participation.
Obviously with lockdown, people are having to change the ways they go about their everyday lives. So what we have seen, particularly since COVID, is a huge number of people cycling for exercise as much as anything else. And the amount of calls and text messages I receive, even daily, saying, I'm looking to buy a new bike for my son or my wife or my husband. So there's an absolute boom in bike sales. And I think that is, it's a great thing. And as people return to their offices, particularly in cities and how they get into their office environments, they are actually looking at other options such as walking, jogging and cycling. That will require people to change their behaviour, but I think the more we can normalise cycling, the more it becomes the awareness of drivers of cars and lorries and taxis and other things. So the more bikes that are on public roads, the more that people will look out for cyclists as well. So for us, it can only be a good thing. We hope it continues. It will be an inconvenience to some, but hopefully a new norm, and people will value exercise and trying to build that into their daily routine.
If we look at it from the sports point of view, what has lockdown, what has COVID done to all the disciplines within Scottish cycling?
Yeah, I think the disciplines in our events is obviously a big part of our programme and our calendar, but also so is, what our clubs and what happens in our local communities. If you look at cycling clubs now, there's definitely a model that's about recreation, participation, being part of something. So all that activity, as well as the structured coaching, has had to be closed down, basically. All our events are suspended until the 1st of August at the moment. The international racing calendar has been, halted. Things are now starting to commence again in some other countries. We've obviously got Tour de France, the Giro. The bigger events are now on the calendar, the World Tour, Pro Tour, etc. But a lot of that's been driven for financial reasons, of course. But from a Scottish perspective, it's about public health. We have to demonstrate that we can meet the guidance. We will be dependent upon what happens with facilities. Will the track open? Will we have athletes in a state of readiness to compete? Will the public be able to access those facilities? From our sport, most of the disciplines happen outdoors, whether that be downhill mountain biking, cross country, cyclocross, BMX, time trialing, speedway. So I guess one of the positives is that the virus doesn't spread as much outdoors. However, social distancing will be a challenge. But what we're doing is we're looking at to run the format of time trialing as possible, to run a cyclocross race in a more time trialing format is possible, to run cross-country mountain biking in some sort of timed format where it's not people taking over each other or a mass start or a bunch start is possible. So we can see ways that we could social distance from a point of view of the competition. It's not just about the field of play as such, it's about how do you run a bike race. Given that our sport domestically is run by volunteers, we have to first and foremost take the riders' safety into consideration, but also what burden and what expectation do we want to put on our volunteers. So again, with COVID and I guess the added risk that comes with that, we've got to say to our organisers, how do you feel? And whatever decision we make around racing for the rest of the year, we're going to hopefully have an evidence-based approach. And we'll make the decision that the community, which also includes the riders, what do they want? And if I'm honest, there is a sense of this year is pretty much written off. If somebody says, we want to run a race, we believe we can run it and adhere to the guidance, we will work with the promoters to look at that, but ultimately we will only sanction and allow that race to go ahead on the basis that it's safe and people want to take part.
When we think about disciplines like road racing, Obviously, we know about the bunch. We know that there's a few elbows. People are close there in the tactics. So does that mean that traditional road racing as we know it at the moment would not be able to take place because of the 2 metre social distancing?
It's a good question. As it currently stands, it's looking like until there is a vaccination found, or until this virus is under control, I think it's unlikely that we will be able to run competition where there is social contact. Unless we can have everybody tested and we have confidence knowing that the virus is not going to spread with not just the riders, but with the officials and the volunteers and then spectators. So I do think it's unrealistic in the short term to expect competition.
Craig, I could imagine that you would be keen to get your track cyclists back into the velodrome. What will be some of the difficulties that you face there?
Again, we'll be working with Glasgow Life as the operator of the Emirates Arena to really look at what are the requirements going to be to access a building, whether that's one-way systems. But cyclists being cyclists, we can turn up with our cycling kit on and leave with our cycling kit on and hopefully cycle home as well. So it's going to come down to the track. If leisure sports facilities are going to open, big spaces are going to be at a premium in terms of social distancing. The track, as it is, you can't use it for anything else really, because it's 40 odd degree angle on bends, etc. So it may be that the centre of the track area, they may have to use that for other activities. And again, if I was operating leisure centres, it's you could see why you might have fitness classes in the middle of the velodrome, for example. There's a big space inside that 250 metre area. So if there are other uses in that middle, I don't see that necessarily having an impact on the cyclists who are going to be on the track around that. So I think that shared space could work, but it is going to be down to how do we socially distance a coaching session. If we can get some competition back on the track, how do we make sure that there is social distancing in place until such time, of course, that we can either test people or indeed, hopefully, there is a vaccination.
What has this meant, Craig, to your elite cyclists, the ones with an eye on Tokyo, the ones with an eye on Birmingham for the Commonwealth Games?
If you look at the Gold Coast, cycling was the most successful sport from Team Scotland. We came home with 10 medals, 4 gold medals. If someone had said to people in cycling a decade ago we're going to be the most successful sport in the Gold Coast in 2018, people would have said you're having a laugh. So I think the whole system is going to have taken a knock. But the whole world has been affected by this. This is a public health pandemic. It's about saving lives, and I do think people will understand that sport has to play its part and say, well, we are going to have to stop for a bit. We're going to have to reset the dial. But looking ahead, we've obviously, from our own perspective, Birmingham 2022, hopefully that's going to give us enough time. Tokyo being delayed first, I would expect the Scots who are in the system, who have a medal chance of Tokyo, will be given the support required to ensure they're in their best shape come Tokyo. All going well, I would hope that our Olympic athletes are in as best shape as possible for Tokyo. Scotland building to 2022. Yes, we will have a number of Scots in the GB system, so in some ways they are earmarked for 2022. But there is a belief in our system that we can actually potentially do even better than the Gold Coast if we have the system in place and we can get athletes back training. For us to have sprint, team pursuit, team sprint, male, female, etc., we need the Emirates Arena back up and running. We need the training, we need the competition. So the whole system has definitely taken a knock. However, we will recover. And again, 2023, we've not mentioned that yet. In 2023, Scotland will host the UCI World Championships for 13 different disciplines. So we will see the biggest cycling festival in the world ever come to Scotland, from Fort William, where we'll have downhill, right down to the Tweed Valley, and even disciplines like Grand Fondo will be happening across Scotland. So we have the opportunity in 2023 to put Scotland on the map to show the world what Scotland has to offer, whether that's in the velodrome, on the BMX track, in terms of the Grand Fondo. And it's something that it's never going to happen again. So for us, cycling, and I mean cycling in all its facets, is something that I hope can help Scotland recover from an economy perspective, from a health and well-being, from an active travel, from an inspiration of major events, from a tourism perspective. If cycling in 2023 can be something that's, I guess, post-COVID to reignite and to be part of rebuilding Scotland's economy. People come to Scotland hopefully to cycle, to see our, to make use of our access legislation, our countryside, our facilities, our events. That's part of it. The biggest part for me in Scottish cycling is to make sure that the sport domestically is in a stronger place as a result of 2023. And that's about, we want more kids involved in the sport, we want a stronger workforce, we want more coaches, we want more facilities. And we're working very hard behind the scenes with government, Sport Scotland and others to put plans and a vision in place for Scotland to benefit from 2023. There is hope. There is a big light at the end of the tunnel, but we have to build, and we will restart, and hopefully, vaccination can be found, and we return to normal sooner than later.
Well, here's hoping that everybody's back in the saddle again very quickly. Craig Byrne, thank you so much for talking to me today, and I wish you and the sport all the best to get out of lockdown safely, happily and healthily as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thanks for having us, Rhona. Pleasure.